Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we really try to cut through all the noise and get to the core of what truly matters. And you know that feeling, right? That sort of quiet yearning for a more, I guess, authentic life. A sense of grounding, maybe, a deeper self, especially when the world often feels so, well, relentlessly shallow or overwhelming or just missing something profound. We all hit those moments, don't we, big or small, where we question our purpose, where we're grappling with some inner turmoil or just seeking a more profound connection to, well, everything. It feels pretty universal, that human experience.
It absolutely is. It really is. This quest for meaning, for understanding our place in the grand scheme of things, it's like the underlying pulse of existence. And, every spiritual tradition has tried to address it in its own unique way. We're all just trying to make sense of this really intricate tapestry of life and figure out our role within it.
Exactly. And today we're embarking on a truly unique exploration, a deep dive into an extraordinary collection of wisdom. We've gathered insights from, all across the globe and across centuries. We're pulling from ancient scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran, some really profound philosophical treatises, and also these deeply personal accounts of spiritual journeys. Our sources today are pretty diverse. We've got things like A Course in Miracles, Autobiography of a Yogi, Dark Night of the Soul, Hermann Hesse's, iconic novel Siddhartha, and even some powerful modern explorations like Conversations with God and The Power of Now.
Yeah, it's quite a range. And our mission here, it isn't really to endorse any single path, not at all. It's more about us acting as your guides, maybe. Through this incredibly rich material, we want to extract the most potent nuggets of knowledge, connect ideas that might seem disparate at first glance, maybe highlight some surprising facts, and offer you, the listener, a kind of shortcut to being truly well-informed on this enduring human quest, the quest for inner peace and liberation. My hope really is that together we can uncover some genuinely fresh perspectives on what it means to live a spiritually rich life.
Okay, let's begin then. Let's dive right in. We're starting with what we're calling the universal call, recognizing our present state and the desire for deeper understanding. And it seems like it all starts with facing where we often find ourselves, in modern life, caught in what we might call the illusion of the mundane and maybe that incessant chatter of the overactive mind.
It's really striking, isn't it, how many of these ancient texts speak to a condition that feels incredibly contemporary, just so relevant now. For instance, Autobiography of a Yogi laments what it calls an incurious generation. Just think about that phrase for a moment. Incurious. It speaks to this profound lack of inner exploration, doesn't it? And it suggests this can lead to a state of, groveling or despair existing in what the text describes as dank pessimism. Bleak. It's almost like we're so bogged down by the everyday, by our immediate concerns, that we become heedless of the unconquerable soul within us. We effectively overlook our own immense true potential. Just miss it.
That's a really powerful point because it suggests this feeling of being stuck, this kind of low frequency state. It isn't new at all. It's an age-old human challenge. It's always been there. And adding another layer to this, the Fifth Agreement points out how much of our perceived reality is actually a fiction, our own creation. We constantly make assumptions. We imagine what others are thinking, maybe what they're saying about us. We fabricate a whole story that's only truth for us. Oh, we've all been there, right? You send a text, get a one-word reply back, and suddenly you've written an entire Shakespearean tragedy in your head about what that person really meant, and you're completely convinced your interpretation is the objective truth.
And that's a perfect everyday example of how this self-created fiction actually stops us. It prevents us from seeing objective truth or maybe something deeper. The Power of Now speaks directly to this with its vivid description of these involuntary thought processes. That incessant internal voice, or sometimes even multiple voices, that constantly comment, speculate, judge, compare, complain, like, dislike, on and on. This isn't just some benign inner monologue. It's a tireless storyteller, and honestly often a really negative one. It just projects its fears onto every ambiguous situation. The danger is that this internal chatter isn't just distracting, it's an active tormentor. It's capable of conjuring negative outcomes, which we call worry, and acting as our worst enemy. This constant internal noise, it just depletes our vital energy and causes, frankly, untold misery and unhappiness.
And what's truly profound here, connecting something like that yogi's lament about an incurious generation with, say, St. John of the Cross's Dark Night, is realizing that this stuckness, this isn't just for people who aren't on a spiritual path. Even the proficients, those deep into spiritual practice, already doing things like the purgation of sense, they still carry what are called habitual imperfections and stains of the old man deep within their spirit. It kind of shatters that illusion, doesn't it? That spiritual growth is just this smooth, linear climb to perfection where eventually you just arrive. You're done. Instead, it reveals this universal, often really painful, deep cleaning process, like a spiritual detoxification. It makes surface level fixes seem, well, utterly inadequate. True transformation, it seems, demands this unflinching honesty about our most subtle, ingrained flaws, flaws that go far beyond what rudimentary practices can even touch. And it requires a deeper transformation for what St. John of the Cross terms true divine union.
That's a critical insight, yeah. It means the old man, those ingrained patterns, those subtle attachments, they can hide in plain sight, even within our spiritual practice. The real point here, I think, is that we all hear that inner voice, we all make assumptions, and we all feel stuck in certain patterns sometimes. This initial recognition, just acknowledging our busy, often self-sabotaging mental landscape, that's really the first crucial step towards any genuine spiritual growth. You simply can't address what you don't acknowledge, right? And these texts suggest our inner landscape is far more complex, maybe far trickier than we might initially believe.
That's a powerful statement, and it brings up an interesting tension, doesn't it? Sometimes acknowledging these deep-seated patterns can be incredibly painful, almost like opening an old wound. So, is there a danger in too much self-scrutiny? Or is that pain actually a necessary part of the detox you just mentioned? Because that recognition, it leads us directly into the second part of this universal call, which is the nature of suffering and the imperative for transformation. Once you really see the internal landscape, you inevitably see the suffering it creates.
That pain you're talking about, yes. That's precisely what these traditions point to as a catalyst, a potential turning point. As the Buddha famously taught, and this is recounted in places like the Perennial Philosophy, and when things fall apart, decay is inherent in all component things. Work out your own salvation with diligence. This highlights suffering not as something to be avoided at all costs, but as an inherent and observable part of existence. It's just there. We can recognize it when it arises, whether it's the frustration of not getting what we want, or the physical pain of illness, the inevitability of aging, or facing the ultimate reality of death. The profound insight here, though, isn't to somehow avoid suffering, which is impossible. It's to become curious, notice, and be mindful of our reactions to it, instead of just falling into those habitual, unconscious responses of resistance or avoidance.
So it's not just the suffering itself, but our reaction to it. That's where so much distress comes from. And the power of now introduces a really powerful concept here, the pain body. It explains how we often form an actual identity around our emotional pain. This pain body isn't just a metaphor either. It's described as an energy field, a kind of living past in you, made up of trapped life energy from all your unacknowledged hurts, resentments, griefs. And if we identify with it, if that pain becomes, an essential part of you, we then unconsciously resist or sabotage every attempt to heal, even when we consciously want to. It's a profound realization. Our very identity, our sense of who we think we are, can become completely wrapped up in our suffering, making us cling to it even when we desperately want to be free.
Exactly. And this clinging, this resistance, it's described as a deeply ingrained neurotic pattern, as when things fall apart illustrates further. When we're confronted with difficult feelings like loneliness or hopelessness or profound grief, our conditioned reflex, our go-to move, is often to move to the right or the left. Meaning we distract ourselves with busyness, endless scrolling, whatever. Or we intellectualize our feelings away, analyze them instead of feeling them. We do anything rather than just sit and feel what we feel. The challenge then lies in awakening the bravery that exists in everyone, that capacity we all have to actually go through this often uncomfortable but totally necessary detox. It's really about being present with the discomfort, allowing it to move through you without judgment, which is, let's be honest, far harder than it sounds.
Oh, absolutely. This avoidance of discomfort is such a common thread. The Bhagavad Gita talks about this too, speaking of miserly persons or papants, which is a Sanskrit term that implies not just, stinginess with money or material things, but a deep spiritual poverty, a refusal to invest in their own highest good. These individuals, the text suggests, waste their lives in overly affectionate attachments, maybe to family, society, country, whatever. These attachments, rooted in a material conception of life, or even called a skin disease, as the text graphically puts it, they lead to immense suffering. They mistakenly believe that these external connections can somehow protect them from death or provide ultimate fulfillment. only to find themselves perpetually unfulfilled, always seeking something more outside themselves.
And Arjuna's dilemma, right at the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, is a perfect ancient example of this exact thing. As a warrior, he's facing this devastating battle against his own relatives, his teachers, and he's paralyzed by what the text calls miserly weakness, his deep affection for his family, and this overwhelming desire to protect them, even if it means abandoning his duty, abandoning righteousness. This leads to immense perplexities, deep confusion, and despair. It's a really foundational moment in the text, because his suffering, which is born directly from attachment, becomes the catalyst for his spiritual seeking. He then turns to Lord King, who is presented as the supreme spiritual master, and he desperately seeks a definite solution. He offers himself as a disciple, ready to move beyond just friendly talks to serious transformative inquiry. His pain pushes him to seek deeper answers.
And that's exactly where we hope you, our listener, might find yourself right now, in that place of readiness. If we can recognize these patterns within ourselves, this, overactive mind, these assumptions we make, this identification with pain, these powerful attachments, then we are truly ready. Ready to explore the ancient answers that humanity has discovered for these fundamental human questions. This recognition really sets the stage for genuine, profound transformation. Okay, so we've kind of laid bare the universal human condition, haven't we? The mind static, the pain of attachment. Now, the natural question is, how do we break free? How do we actually change? And humanity, it turns out, has devised countless paths towards inner transformation and spiritual growth. Many different maps. Some are intensely rigorous, almost, terrifyingly so, while others seem perhaps more accessible. Let's start with what might be considered one of the most demanding routes, the path of self-denial, renunciation, and the dark night.
Yes, this path is often presented as the most direct, maybe the quickest, although it certainly requires a radical commitment. Theologia Germanica, for example, states quite clearly that to attain true light and perfect knowledge or life of Christ, one must deny himself and take up his cross, and crucially, forsake and part with everything. Now, this means far more than just superficial sacrifices like giving up chocolate for Lent or something. It's a deep renunciation of one's own likings or desires or opinions or ends, everything. It's a complete reorientation of the will. It's not just about outward actions, but an internal surrender of everything that constitutes the separate egoic self.
Wow, that's a complete overhaul of one's inner world, isn't it? Not just a simple lifestyle change. The Bhagavad Gita echoes this too, defining renunciation. The word is sannyasa as a profound act of linking with the supreme, which is yoga. So it's not simply giving something up. It's giving it up for something higher, a conscious exchange. To become a mystic transcendentalist, the text says, one must give up the desire for self-satisfaction. It's about detaching from the fruits of one's actions and really from the very desires that drive those actions in a self-centered way. Can you imagine moving through life, performing all your duties, but without any personal investment in the outcome, purely as an offering? That's radical.
It is radical. And Hermann Hesse's novel, Siddhartha, gives us a really vivid literary illustration of this path through the Samanas. They were a group of ascetics who practiced what the book calls destructive service and merciless self-denial. The text paints this picture. They appeared skinny, withered, their bodies scorched by the sun. They embodied their identity as strangers and enemies to the world, total outsiders. And Siddhartha himself, in his early journey, fully embraced this extreme lifestyle. He sought to annihilate the self through fasting, intense meditation, physical hardship. This wasn't just a metaphor in the story. It represented a profound, literal commitment to detachment from the material world and the ego.
And then, moving to a different tradition, but a similar intensity, we have the intensely personal and often, frankly, terrifying experience known as the dark night of the soul. St. John of the Cross describes it so vividly. He speaks of it as this profound spiritual journey where God guides souls from being beginners, in a state of active meditation and prayer to becoming progressives who are contemplatives and ultimately guiding them toward divine union. This journey, however, often involves passing through a dark night of the spirit, a period of intense purgation that initially seems to completely blind the spirit. It feels like losing God. But the profound insight here, the paradox, is that this blinding isn't punitive. It's not a punishment. It's actually to enlighten it with a brighter and intenser light. It's a necessary deconstruction, a clearing away to allow for a deeper, more refined perception of reality.
And this purgation, this dark night, has very specific and, as you said, often painful effects. It feels painful. This arid and dark night, St. John says, reforms what he calls spiritual avarice, which is that subtle, lingering self-interest that can creep even into our spiritual practice.
wanting spiritual goodies, consolations. It shifts our motivation so we act for God's sake alone, rather than for personal pleasure or comfort or the sweetness of spiritual experiences we might have had before. It causes these afflictive purgations designed so the soul can be begotten anew in spiritual life. It forces the soul to abandon all its former peace, which, critically, St. John points out, was in reality no peace at all, because it was rooted in imperfections and self-inclination. It was a false peace. So it's a radical deconstruction of everything you thought was comfort and spiritual progress, only to reveal, hopefully, a deeper, truer peace on the other side.
It really sounds like a total spiritual overhaul, tearing down the old, maybe shaky foundations to build something entirely new and solid. And kind of ironically, Conversations with God offers a really provocative perspective on why this forgetting, this darkness, this letting go might even be necessary. It suggests that the whole worldly drama, even the pleasures of the flesh, are somehow designed to help us forget who you are.
Mm-hmm.
This forgetting, the text argues, is actually crucial so that we can then remember and actively recreate yourself anew in every moment in the grandest version of the greatest vision ever you had about who you really are. So the pain of forgetting, or the darkness, can lead directly to the joy and the power of conscious recreation. It's almost like the universe's ultimate spiritual amnesia, setting the stage for a grander remembering.
That's a fascinating way to frame it. So yeah, while these paths of self-denial in the dark night are undeniably intense, maybe even daunting, they offer a possibility of radical transformation for those seeking ultimate liberation. They challenge our comfortable attachments, our familiar perceptions, pushing us beyond the illusion of control to a deeper, perhaps more profound truth. It's not just about changing your mind. It seems to be about transcending it entirely.
Okay. That exploration of intense renunciation, things like the samanas or the dark night, it certainly gives us a sense of the potential for radical transformation. But it also raises a question, probably for many listeners: must spiritual growth always be so extreme, so demanding? Thankfully, our deep dive reveals other powerful, perhaps more accessible avenues, different doorways. So let's move now to practices focused more on mindfulness, awareness, and radical acceptance. These seem to be approaches that meet us more directly in our everyday experience, maybe offering a different kind of liberation.
Yes, they absolutely offer a different, yet I would say equally profound, approach to engaging with our inner world. Waking up, for example, defines mindfulness not merely as, clearer thinking, but as the act of experiencing more clearly. It's described as a vivid awareness of whatever is appearing in one's mind or body, so thoughts, sensations, moods, without grasping at the pleasant or recoiling from the unpleasant. And crucially, the text emphasizes it requires no cultural affectations or unjustified beliefs. You don't need to believe anything special to do it. It's a direct, almost empirical engagement with present moment reality, stripping away all our usual mental filters and judgments.
That's a key distinction, isn't it? It's not necessarily about changing what you feel, but fundamentally changing how you relate to what you feel, your stance towards it. And this leads us directly to the concept of radical acceptance, as described so well by Tara Brach. This involves clearly recognizing what is happening inside us, and then importantly, regarding what we see with an open, kind, and loving heart. The idea is that this directly dismantles the very foundations of the trance of unworthiness, that deep-seated, often unconscious belief that we are somehow fundamentally flawed or not good enough. By countering our automatic reflex to resist pain, whether it's physical or emotional, with that mental contraction and judgment, radical acceptance replaces that fight-or-flight response with kindness and openness. Instead of fighting the feeling, you meet it with compassion.
And a really powerful, simple technique within this framework is the practice of this too. When strong cravings arise, or difficult desires, unsettling thoughts, intense feelings, first you observe them. Then maybe you name them gently. This is anger arising, or this is craving, this is a judging thought. And then you simply acknowledge internally, this too. This is also part of my present experience. This allows you to start seeing your inner experiences as this endless changing parade. Things just coming and going, and you start realizing, wait, I'm not making it happen. It's just arising. It's a profound shift from identifying with these transient states, believing I am angry, to simply witnessing them pass through your awareness. You understand that even acute cravings or intense emotions, they eventually subside. They change. You become the spacious observer, not the one consumed by the feeling.
So you're not trying to push them away, not resisting, just acknowledging their transient presence, letting them be. The untethered soul and also the power of now elaborate on this with the practice of watching the thinker as a way to disidentify. By recognizing thoughts simply as objects of awareness, realizing that you are the subject and thoughts are just another object you can be aware of, like sounds or sights, we come to this profound realization. You are not your thoughts. You are simply aware of your thoughts.
Yes.
This act of witnessing, just watching them come and go, is crucial for breaking that attachment to the pain body we discussed earlier. It creates this vital space, this buffer between you and your internal narratives. And that space allows you to choose your response rather than being automatically driven by every thought that pops into your head.
Building on that Buddhist practice, as detailed in sources like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, cultivates mental tranquility, often called calm abiding or shamatha. This is essentially developing a deep, stable focus that settles the mind, like letting muddy water become clear. And this calm abiding is seen as an essential prerequisite for penetrative insight, or vipassana. Now, vipassana isn't just about feeling calm. It's an active, analytical, meditative state that deeply examines specific aspects of reality, chosen objects of meditation. So whether you're meditating on something considered mundane, like the impermanence of a thought or the nature of suffering, or something super mundane like the nature of emptiness, which importantly isn't nothingness, but rather the absence of inherent independent existence in phenomena. The goal is to move beyond just conceptual understanding to a direct experiential non-dual realization, a state where the distinction between the observer and the observed starts to dissolve. It's a very systematic approach. First stilling the mind, then using that stillness to see reality with profound, undistorted clarity.
It sounds like these practices, mindfulness, awareness, radical acceptance, offer accessible, yet incredibly powerful methods for engaging with our inner experience right here, right now. They seem to foster a sense of spaciousness, acceptance, and clarity within us, allowing us to navigate our internal states, our thoughts and feelings, rather than being constantly swept away by them. It's really about finding freedom in the midst of your experience without necessarily needing to escape it or change it immediately. Okay, so we've talked quite a bit about the internal landscape, our minds, our suffering, and different ways to approach them. But what about our relationships with others and with the world around us? How do these deep spiritual truths actually play out when we're interacting with other people day to day? This really leads us to the heart of something incredibly profound across traditions, the transformative power of love, compassion, and service.
It's truly fascinating, isn't it? How consistently these diverse traditions coming from different times and places point to love as both a means and a key outcome of spiritual growth. It's central. Eric Fromm, for instance, in his classic The Art of Loving, defines genuine love not as just a passive affect or, a fleeting emotion that just happens to us. He defines it as an expression of productiveness that inherently includes things like care, respect, responsibility, and knowledge. These are active components. It's an active striving for the growth and happiness of the loved person, rooted in one's own capacity to love. And that's a critical distinction he makes, because it implies you can't truly love others well if your own well is dry, if your own well-being is neglected. Crucially, Fromm states that love of others and love of ourselves are not alternatives. They are basically conjunctive. They go together. You can't genuinely love one without the other. A healthy self-love or self-acceptance is really the foundation for authentic other love.
That's such a powerful and often misunderstood point, I think. It's not selfish to care for yourself. It's actually essential if you want to love others deeply and genuinely. Conversations with God takes this concept even further, presenting this divine message, this command almost, to make every moment of your life an outpouring of love. And it gets really specific about what that means. Embracing all circumstances, owning your faults with humility, sharing joy generously, contemplating life's mysteries with awe, forgiving offenses, including your own, with grace, healing hearts through empathy, honoring others' truth even if it differs from yours, adoring their God as you adore your own, protecting their rights, preserving their dignity, promoting their interests, providing for their needs where you can, presuming their inherent holiness, and presenting their greatest gifts back to them, helping them see their own worth. It's just this call to active, all-encompassing, relentless compassion in every single facet of life. Wow.
It's a high calling. And Course in Miracles connects love directly to freedom from guilt. It emphasizes the release from guilt through love, stating unequivocally, there is no fear in love, for love is guiltless. Guilt is such a pervasive, heavy burden, isn't it? Often self-imposed. And it blocks our connection to our true nature, to that inner light. So to look within and see the light of love requires releasing this guilt. We have to let it go, recognizing that your guilt is without reason because it is not in the mind of God. It's an illusion we've constructed. The Holy Spirit, in the Course's context, would remove only illusions like guilt to show us the perfect purity that is forever within God's Son, which is you, which is everyone. It's presented as a profound liberation from self-condemnation, revealing an inherent worth that was never truly lost, just covered up.
It's about seeing your inherent worth, finally, which then allows you to project that same recognition outwardly, not from a place of neediness, but from a place of abundance. Dietrich Bonhoeffer's The Cost of Discipleship describes an extraordinary quality required for followers of Christ. He frames it as simple, unreflecting obedience to the will of Christ, which, paradoxically maybe, often manifests as ceaseless suffering endured by the disciple. Now, this isn't suffering for suffering's sake. It's not masochism. It's the sacrifice that's often involved in radical, selfless love and service to others, putting others first. This, Bonhoeffer argues, is how the church, in its purest form, invades the life of the world and conquers territory for Christ, not through power, but through Christian love and dedicated service to brethren. It highlights that radical, selfless love is not always comfortable or easy. It often comes at a cost, but it's profoundly impactful.
And the Tao Te Ching, coming from a completely different tradition, offers a beautifully complementary perspective. It states that the Tao of heaven has no favorites. It always sides with one who has a pure heart. And it draws this clear distinction between the truly virtuous person, who always seeks a way to give, and one who lacks virtue, who always seeks a way to get. To the giver, the text promises the fullness of life. It implies that true abundance isn't found in hoarding or accumulation, but actually in the outflow of generosity and compassion. It's a clear endorsement of selflessness as a path to spiritual richness and, well, existential richness too.
This emphasis on giving and taking responsibility extends powerfully to the concept of forgiveness as well. The seed of the soul makes it crystal clear. Forgiveness means that you do not hold others responsible for your experiences. Whoa. That is a massive paradigm shift for most of us, I think. If we don't hold ourselves accountable for our own inner state, our reactions, our feelings, we naturally blame others. It's the default. Complaining, the book argues, is actually a subtle form of manipulation, a way to try and exert influence or get sympathy without taking ownership of our part. Instead, we're encouraged to assume responsibility for our own reality, our own experience, and then share our experiences in a spirit of companionship, not blame, moving from victimhood to radical self-empowerment and potentially much more honest connection.
Absolutely. You see this thread woven through all these different sources. They consistently point to love, compassion, and this active, non-judgmental engagement with the world as both a key outcome and a powerful facilitator of spiritual growth. They invite us to move beyond our narrow self-interest and embrace a radical interconnectedness with all of life. Understanding fundamentally that our own liberation is deeply intertwined with the liberation and well-being of others. We're not separate.
Okay, we've been exploring the intensely personal journey quite a bit, our minds, our paths, our relationships. Now let's widen our lens again, maybe as wide as it goes, to the nature of the divine and ultimate reality. What is this grand tapestry within which all our individual quests seem to unfold? What does ultimate truth look like across these diverse perspectives? This is the big picture stuff.
Right, this brings us to some of the most profound and honestly mind-bending concepts human thought has ever grappled with, really stretching our understanding. Conversations with God, for instance, describes the divine as the unmoved mover, the created creator. It says God created it all at once, with all of it existing right now. Everything is simultaneous. The text explicitly says everything is happening at once. And we are told you have always been, are now, and always will be, eternal. This ultimate reality, called the one great truth, allows us to experience that which has, in a sense, already been created. It profoundly challenges our normal, linear understanding of time, past, present, future, and creation itself. St. Augustine, in his Confessions, touches on something similar, marveling that God seemed to hold off for uncountable ages before creating, only to then suggest we are amazed at things that never happened, implying this timeless eternal now where all moments, all possibilities somehow coexist.
So it's a reality utterly beyond our typical comprehension of time. Past, present, future, all just. Now, where all of creation is somehow simultaneously present, that's hard to grasp. Vedic philosophy, as explained in texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, further elaborates on this supreme truth. It describes it as being realized in three progressive aspects, like levels of understanding. First, as impersonal Brahman, that's the all-pervading, undifferentiated spiritual energy or substance, everywhere, in everything. Then, as localized Paramatma, that's the supersoul, the divine presence residing within the heart of every living being, closer, more intimate. And finally, at last, as the supreme personality of Godhead, often identified as Kant, the ultimate personal source of both Brahman and Paramatma. This suggests this kind of graduated understanding, where the final stage involves comprehending the divine not just as energy or presence, but as a supreme person with whom a relationship is possible.
And to truly grasp this, to reach that level of understanding, the Bhagavad Gita states that he who knows me keen as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, is undiluted among men and is freed from all sins. Now, this knowledge isn't just intellectual assent, like agreeing with the statement. It's described as a deep experiential realization of ultimate reality that actually liberates one from the cycles of karmic reaction and material illusion. It implies a profound recognition of one's own eternal connection to this supreme source.
And we see a really powerful echo of this, maybe in more poetic terms, in Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. In that moment of deep awakening after years of searching and experiencing life in all its facets, pleasure, pain, everything, Siddhartha suddenly knew about Brahman, knew about the indestructibility of life, knew about all that is divine, which he had forgotten.
Forgetting again.
Exactly. This realization, which the novel suggests, can often be accessed through practices like the meditative recitation of the sacred syllable Om. It isn't about learning something entirely new. It's about remembering something intrinsically known deep within. It brings one back to the nameless, the perfected, that core essence that precedes all form and identity.
What's fascinating here, too, is how this ultimate reality is often described as being beyond our normal sensory grasp or even purely intellectual understanding. It can't just be thought about. St. John of the Cross, back in Dark Night of the Soul, speaks of God's wisdom of love, teaching the soul directly within it in its substance. A truth so profound, he says, that not only does the soul not understand it intellectually, but there is none that does so, not even the devil. It's beyond comprehension in that way. This inward wisdom is so simple, so general, and so spiritual that it has not entered into the understanding and wrapped or cloaked in any form or image subject to sense. It highlights the ineffable, the non-conceptual nature of the divine. It's a direct knowing that transcends ordinary perception and intellect.
An internal, direct knowing that goes beyond ordinary perception, like a download almost. And A Course in Miracles reinforces this idea, stating that the only way is really to look within and see the light of love, shining as steadily and as surely as God himself has always loved his Son. This inner vision, the Course promises, reveals one's inherent holiness, our true nature, and releases fear, because ultimately love is guiltless. It's presented as a profound self-discovery that untethers us from all those self-created limitations and fears.
Taking all these perspectives together, they really invite us, the listeners, to expand our understanding of the divine far beyond maybe conventional images or limiting dogmas we might have inherited. They point towards an inherent, all-encompassing reality that isn't external or distant, but profoundly intimate, right here. And accessible through various means, not just through intellectual belief, but through a profound shift in our internal experience and consciousness, a change in how we see and feel.
So, if the divine is this all-encompassing reality, boundless and eternal, potentially right here, how do we actually get there? How do we connect? How do we, as seemingly finite beings, consciously connect with that infinite potential? This brings us to the journey to union and enlightenment. It's often depicted as challenging, yes, requiring immense dedication, but ultimately perhaps the most rewarding human endeavor possible.
Indeed. And the descriptions can be quite stark. St. John of the Cross, again in Dark Night of the Soul, describes the process of essentially becoming divine through annihilation. Strong words. To achieve true union with divine light and become divine in the state of perfection, he says the understanding should first of all be purged and annihilated as to its natural light. Now, this isn't about self-destruction in a negative way. It's not nihilism. But it is described as a profound and horrible and most painful process of confronting and letting go of everything we think we know. Our acquired knowledge, our intellectual frameworks, our egoic identity, and that deep inner darkness we carry. It's portrayed not as a gentle ascent up a sunny hill, but a radical stripping away of all that is not divine, a kind of emptying to be filled anew.
It certainly sounds intense, almost terrifying, the idea of annihilating one's natural light, the way we normally see things. Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, though, offers maybe a gentler yet equally profound metaphor for this journey. Vasudeva, the enlightened ferryman character, tells Siddhartha that the river has taught me to listen. From it you will learn it as well. It knows everything. The river, everything can be learned from it.
Beautiful.
And one of the key things it teaches, Vasudeva says, is to strive downwards, to sink, to seek depth. This beautifully illustrates that spiritual growth often involves a descent into the self, into the subconscious, into humility and inner stillness, rather than just an upward climb towards perceived higher states or flashy experiences. True wisdom, like a deep river, often flows quietly beneath the surface.
Yes. And this journey, whether it's framed as annihilation or deep listening or something else, ultimately leads to a very specific felt state, a way of being. The power of now explains enlightenment not merely as some abstract concept, but as a direct felt experience. Being can be felt as the ever-present I am that is beyond name and form. It's that pure, unconditioned awareness, presence. To abide in that deeply rooted state, Eckhart Tolle says, is enlightenment, is the truth that Jesus says will make you free. It's a liberation from the illusion of being just a separate, fragmented self. It's a merging or a recognition of the essential I am that is timeless and eternal. It's not something you get or achieve like a trophy, but something you are that you finally realize.
And a crucial part of this liberation, it seems, involves consciously managing our internal world, particularly our thoughts. Conversations with God declares a really powerful truth. Thought control is the highest form of prayer. Now, this probably isn't about suppressing thoughts, forcing them down, but more about consciously directing your mental energy, choosing where you place your focus. We are encouraged to think only on good things and righteous, and to dwell not in negativity and darkness, especially when things feel bleak. The idea is to maintain inner tranquility and peace by consciously choosing the quality of our thoughts. It's about recognizing the immense creative power of your thoughts and aligning them with your highest intentions.
However, it's vitally important to recognize, as some texts warn, that outward religious practice doesn't always equate to genuine inner transformation. There can be a disconnect. The biblical narrative in 2 Kings 13, for example, recounts that King Jehoahaz of Israel did what was evil in the Lord's eyes. He walked in the sins that Jeroboam had caused Israel to commit. A clear pattern of wrongdoing. Yet despite this profound deviation from spiritual truth, this lack of inner alignment, the text specifically notes that a sacred pole, a religious symbol, stood in Samaria. This illustrates how outward religious symbols or established practices can exist right alongside a complete lack of genuine spiritual truth or inner integrity. It's a powerful caution against conflating ritual or belonging with true devotion or inner change.
That's such a crucial distinction, a reminder to look beyond mere external observance, both in others and ourselves. But then on the other hand, William James's The Varieties of Religious Experience gives us the really compelling example of George Mueller. His life exemplified an extreme form of faith and radical trust.
Amazing story.
Muller's crassest petitional order, prayers, often just simply asking God directly for what was needed for his orphanages, however unlikely it seemed, combined with this literal sincerity in biblical promises. It led to an extraordinarily active and successful career in philanthropy. He built huge orphanages, cared for thousands of children, all apparently without ever asking people for money, relying purely on what he believed was divine providence without any worldly foresight. It speaks to the immense potential power of radical trust and a simple, direct form of prayer rooted in absolute conviction.
These different insights, taken together, they underscore that the journey to union, to enlightenment, is deeply personal. It's often challenging, and it requires a profound shift in consciousness. It demands a willingness to transcend our ordinary way of perceiving reality, not just to change our beliefs on the surface, but to fundamentally change our way of being in the world. It's definitely a path for the courageous, isn't it? For those willing to go deeper than mere comfort allows.
Absolutely. Okay. We've explored some pretty profound philosophical and spiritual concepts, the nature of our minds, the divine, the path to enlightenment, big stuff. But what does all this ancient wisdom actually mean for our day-to-day lives? Monday morning, stuck in traffic. How do we take these deep insights and actually apply them, make them real? This next section is all about practical applications for daily living, cultivating an awakened life, making it practical.
Yes, this is really where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? How do we live this? The Bhagavad Gita offers direct counsel on navigating action, choice, and responsibility. It advises, in all activities, just depend upon me, King, and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. This suggests an approach where every action, no matter how small or mundane, becomes an offering, undertaken not solely for personal gain or driven by egoic desire, but with a higher consciousness, a constant remembrance of that divine connection.
It's about transforming your work, your chores, your interactions into a form of worship, a way of connecting.
So it's not about stopping action or retreating from the world, but about transforming the intention and the awareness behind the action. That's key. The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra reinforces this by stating, quite simply, your future is generated by the choices you are making in every moment of your life.
Powerful.
By actively bringing our choices into conscious awareness, which means maybe just pausing before acting, reflecting on our motivations and potential outcomes, we are empowered to make what the book calls spontaneously correct decisions. These aren't just decisions that are good for us, but ones that benefit ourselves and those around us. Decisions that align us with a larger, harmonious flow. It's really a call to profound personal accountability for shaping our own reality moment by moment.
And to assist us in making these conscious choices, that same text powerfully suggests consulting the intuitive wisdom of the heart. Listening inwards. The heart in this context isn't just about raw emotion. It's described as being intuitive. It's holistic. It's contextual. It's relational. It doesn't have a win-lose orientation. It sees the bigger picture. So when faced with a decision, the idea is to tune into the heart. It provides a physical response in the form of a sensation, maybe a feeling of comfort or discomfort, expansion or contraction. This sensation can guide our path, often more accurately than purely rational, calculating thought, which can be easily swayed by fear or desire. It's a call to really tune into that deeper, embodied inner compass that transcends mere logic. That's a potential game changer for decision-making, especially for people who tend to rely solely on their intellect, maybe overthinking everything. And for actually developing these new ways of being, these new habits, the fifth agreement emphasizes the importance of just do your best and persistent practice. It's not about perfectionism.
Right. Be gentle with yourself.
Exactly. Mastering these new agreements, like being impeccable with your word, not taking things personally, not making assumptions, it's a gradual process. It takes time. We shouldn't expect to master them right away, and definitely shouldn't fall into harsh self-judgment. When we inevitably falter, we will falter. Instead, the wisdom advises just commit to do your best in this moment. And repeat these agreements, maybe daily, as reminders. With repetition and practice, those old negative habits will naturally become weaker and less frequent over time. It's about consistent, compassionate effort, not demanding instant, impossible perfection.
And when faced with unpleasant experiences, which are, let's face it, inevitable in life, the untethered soul advises cultivating the willingness to let whatever happens make it through you, rather than carrying it into the next moment. This means processing experiences in real time as they happen, as much as possible. If we resist, if we clench up internally, react automatically with anger or fear, or try to push the feeling away, we're not truly dealing with the current event. We're actually reacting based on blocked energies from the past, acting from a place of inner resistance and tension. Old stuff gets triggered. So it's about allowing the energy of experience to flow, to move through you without accumulating, without sticking. Much like that river Siddhartha learned so much from.
These principles really offer a practical toolkit for conscious living, don't they? They seem to transform our everyday actions, choices, and even difficult experiences into opportunities for spiritual alignment and growth. They're not just abstract philosophical ideas, they're direct, actionable instructions for how to engage with life in a way that fosters inner peace and hopefully external harmony too. This whole journey we've been talking about, from recognizing our current state to embracing various paths, understanding the divine, applying it practically, it naturally brings us to the big question of purpose. What is it all for? What's the ultimate point of this human experience, according to these traditions? This final segment is about defining purpose and embracing the journey.
Well, Conversations with God offers a very clear and I think incredibly expansive definition of our ultimate purpose in becoming human. It states our purpose is to decide and to declare, to create and to express, to experience and to fulfill who you really are. And then it adds to recreate yourself anew in every moment, in the grandest version of the greatest vision ever you had about who you really are. So notice, this isn't a fixed, predetermined purpose that you just find somewhere outside yourself, like finding a lost object.
Yeah.
Instead, it's presented as an ongoing, dynamic process of conscious self-creation.
Yeah.
Continually aligning with your highest potential and expressing your inherent divine nature in your own unique way.
Wow. A continuous evolution, a constant unfolding of our divine nature. That takes the pressure off finding the one thing, maybe. And speaking of purpose and connecting, let's reconsider prayer in this context. William James, in Varieties of Religious Experience, offers a broader definition. He sees prayer not merely as asking for things, petitioning, but more as an attitude of open and earnest expectancy. a state of being. It's described as a real increase in intensity of absorption of spiritual power or grace. And interestingly, the specific recipient, the name you give the divine, James notes, does not much matter because the grace flows from the infinite spiritual world regardless. This attitude of deep openness, of sincere readiness to receive and be shaped, that is the key. It's more about aligning yourself with that universal flow of spiritual energy rather than just making a specific request list.
That really broadens our understanding of what prayer can be, doesn't it? Makes it an active state of being, potentially always available. Furthermore, James also describes certain individuals, often called saints, as being like societal leavens. He observes that while a perfect man is adapted only to the perfect environment, which doesn't exist, saints, by embodying an extraordinary quality of being and embracing the heroic life, often through asceticism, voluntary poverty, or radical acts of compassion, they act as leavens in the world. Like yeast and dough, they inspire change. They challenge societal norms just by their presence, and they provide a visible example of a life lived in profound spiritual alignment. They sort of pull humanity or nudge it toward a higher standard.
That's a powerful way to think about the impact of personal transformation on the collective. Our individual journeys really do have ripples, don't they? And for Siddhartha, his journey ultimately led him to a very independent, personal understanding of truth. He had to find it himself. He came to realize that nobody will obtain salvation by means of teachings. You will not be able to convey and say to anybody what has happened to you in the hour of enlightenment. It's ineffable.
Can't be put into words fully.
This conviction led him to eventually depart from all teachings and all teachers to find his own goal independently through direct experience. It's a powerful testament to the intensely personal nature of ultimate truth. It must be experienced directly, not just learned intellectually or taught by another.
And bringing us back to that beautiful metaphor that seems to tie so many of these concepts together. The river in Siddhartha symbolizes the ultimate teacher. Vasudeva, the wise ferryman, attests that the river knows everything and teaches one crucial lesson: to seek depth, to go deeper. It also inherently reveals the impermanence of existence, how everything constantly changes, flows, yet somehow remains fundamentally itself. And it shows the interconnectedness of suffering and joy within its continuous current. Both are part of the flow. It's like a living, breathing guide for the entire spiritual path, reflecting the natural ebb and flow of life itself.
Ultimately, then, it seems these texts, these diverse voices, invite us to define our own purpose. Not necessarily to find a pre-written one, to engage in a continuous process of self-creation, self-discovery, and to find our own unique pathway to deep spiritual fulfillment, trusting our inner guidance, like the river. It's really an invitation, isn't it? To step into the fullest, most authentic expression of who you truly are, knowing that the journey itself, the process, is the destination. And there we have it, our deep dive today into unpacking ancient wisdom for modern living. We've journeyed through an incredibly rich landscape of spiritual thought, haven't we? From, the intense demands of self-denial and the transformative, if difficult, dark night of the soul, all the way to the liberating, accessible practices of mindfulness and radical acceptance.
We really have.
Yeah.
And we've explored some profound concepts of the divine, understanding it potentially as the unmoved mover, and realizing the supreme truth in its various aspects, impersonal, personal, and dwelling. We've considered the multifaceted nature of the self beyond just the ego, and we kept coming back to the incredible transformative power of love, compassion, and conscious action, seeing them as both a path and an outcome of spiritual awakening.
It's striking that while the terminology, the specific practices obviously vary across these diverse traditions, a clear resonant thread emerges. You hear it again and again. It's this consistent call to awaken from illusion, the illusions our minds create, the illusions society promotes, to embrace our true nature, whatever we understand that to be, and to live from a place of deeper purpose, connection, and love. It feels like such an ancient message that, in our fast-paced, often fragmented modern world, feels more urgent, more relevant than ever before.
Absolutely. It really does. In a world that constantly pulls us outward, doesn't it? Always vying for our attention, trying to get us to buy something, believe something, and often defining our worth by purely external measures: success, appearance, status. We're left with this question, maybe for you, our listener, to carry forward. What would it truly mean for you in your unique life to genuinely heed the call of your unconquerable soul, as the yogi called it?
And how might you, maybe just moment by moment, Consciously choose to recreate yourself anew in every moment, in the grandest version of the greatest vision ever you had about who you really are. Not as some act of ego trying to be better than others, but as a profound expression of your inherent divine nature, your unique spark, transforming not just your own inner world, but potentially, in small ways and large, the collective reality we all share. That's definitely something to ponder, I think, long after this deep dive ends.